He is not there to ask questions of your party. I think we'll leave it at that. I'm not continuing the debate at this stage. Right. We now come to statements. Secretary of State, Ed Miliband.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with permission, I would like to make a statement about the Warm Homes Plan, which we published today. Mr. Speaker, this is a plan focused on the #1 issue facing our country, the cost of living crisis, and on the scourge of fuel poverty, which affects millions of families across Britain. Now, at the budget, my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, took an average of £150 of costs off energy bills from April. This winter, we've expanded the warm home discount to a total of 6 million families, and today we allocate £15 billion in our Warm Homes Plan. Mr. Speaker, a more than doubling of public investment in home upgrades compared to the last Parliament. In fact, the biggest public investment in home upgrades in British history to cut bills and tackle fuel poverty. And in making this investment, we turn the page on a lost decade of the last government's failure. Home insulation levels falling by more than 90% between 2010 and 2024. The promise of minimum energy efficiency standards for renters broken. The cancellation of the zero carbon home standard and the repeated failures of schemes like the Green Deal, the Green Homes Grant and the Eco Scheme. And worst of all, Mr. Speaker, our dependence on fossil fuels, leaving us exposed to the worst energy bills crisis in generations. Mr. Speaker, the last government failed time after time. This government is doing the work to put it right. The starting point for this plan is that clean energy is not only the right choice for energy security and reducing emissions, but for cutting people's bills. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, the public agrees. They are showing record demand for technologies like solar, batteries and heat pumps that can save families hundreds of pounds a year. Heat pump sales in Britain have grown by around 50% annually, one of the fastest growing markets in Europe. Last year saw a record number of rooftop solar installations. And the driving purpose of this plan is to ensure those benefits are available not just to the wealthiest, but to families throughout our country at every level of income. The driving purpose of this Labour government to stand up for working people and tackle the affordability crisis. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me set out the measures we are announcing in our plan today. First, today we announced £5 billion of public investment to directly deliver home upgrades for low-income families. This will help families living in social housing and low-income owner-occupiers to have warmer homes and lower bills. In setting out this plan, we're abolishing the failed Eco Scheme and making the principled decision that we should fund support through public investment, not levies on bills. And our plan, Madam Deputy Speaker, pays heed to all the evidence that says this funding is best delivered with local authorities and mayors in the driving seat. People, those representing local people, delivering for local people. And at the same time, we recognise the challenges facing suppliers who used to deliver eco, so we'll ensure this extra money is used to help support them. And my right honourable friend, the Minister for Energy Consumers, will convene a working group of contractors, social housing providers and local authorities to oversee this work. Overall, this allocation to tackle fuel poverty is the biggest public investment in tackling fuel poverty in our nation's history. Second, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a scandal that 1.6 million children live in private accommodation suffering from cold, damp or mould, according to Citizens' Advice. We on this side believe in a simple principle. If you rent a home, private or social, your landlord has a responsibility to ensure it is safe, warm and affordable to heat. The last government, Madam Deputy Speaker, promised higher standards, and then they ripped up that promise. Today we deliver. By 2030, private landlords will have to upgrade their properties to meet minimum standards of energy efficiency, and we've consulted on similar rules in the social rented sector, tackling the scourge of poor quality rented homes and cutting bills for renters. And I can tell the House that these measures alone will lift over 500,000 families out of fuel poverty. Third, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is right we target help at those most in need. But we know the affordability crisis stretches well beyond those on low incomes. We want to make it easier for all households to cut their bills by choosing a heat pump, solar or batteries. So building on the steps we took at the budget to make electricity cheaper, we're expanding the boiler upgrade scheme. increasing investment every year out to 2030, with, for the first time, a universal offer of £2,500 for a heat battery or air-to-air heat pump, as well as £7,500 to install a conventional heat pump. But I want to go further. Currently, just 1 in 20 homes in Britain have solar panels installed on their rooftops. We are determined to unleash a rooftop revolution, helping many more families generate their own energy to cut their bills. So I can announce that the government is for the first time ever setting aside up to £2 billion to subsidise zero and low interest loans for solar panels, batteries and other technologies, learning from the successful experience of other countries and meeting the demand of people for this technology. And Madam Deputy Speaker, this is just the first step, with a further £3 billion available for loans and investments over the coming years through our Warm Homes Fund. Fourth, as we upgrade existing homes, we will ensure that new homes are built cheaper to run with solar and clean heating as standard. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is just common sense. People cannot understand why we are building new homes with higher bills. The reason is because they refused to act. We are putting an end to this absurd situation. We will publish the future home standards shortly, and for the first time, solar panels will be fitted as standard in new homes. And alongside the other measures I've set out, this is designed to help treble the number of homes with solar by the end of the decade. Fifth, to make these changes happen, we cannot go on with the old system of accountability and delivery that has frankly failed. A situation where people have to navigate a fragmented and confusing system of home upgrades delivered through a bewildering number of organisations and schemes. And we need to face up to the fact that after repeated failures of the last government to deliver schemes effectively, we need a specialist body with the technical expertise and focus required. So consolidating functions from Ofgem and other organisations and abolishing SALIX, and with no increase in arm's-length bodies, we will establish a new Warm Homes Agency. It will deliver impartial advice and guidance, work with local authorities and businesses, oversee government schemes, backed by a reformed system of consumer protection. Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, we will put an end to the scandalous failure of accountability and regulation and the waste of the public's money we saw under the last government. Finally, we are determined to ensure this rollout delivers not just for consumers but workers too. We're the largest producers of gas boilers in Europe, and there's a huge opportunity to harness this expertise to produce heat pumps as well. Manufacturers are already embracing this opportunity, including Ideal Heating in Hull, Valent in Derbyshire, which I visited last year, and Copeland in Northern Ireland. But currently less than 40% of heat pumps sold in Britain are made in Britain. We're setting a new aim of at least 70% of heat pumps installed in the UK being made in the UK, backed by a trebling of public investment in heat pump manufacturing with £90 million set aside today. Overall, we expect the Warm Homes Plan to support up to 180,000 additional jobs in energy efficiency, heat pumps and heat networks by the end of the decade, creating opportunities for builders, electricians, plumbers and installers, as well as new workers entering the industry. And Madam Deputy Speaker, we will establish a new task force with the TUC, working with business, to ensure these jobs are well paid and highly skilled, with a proper role for trade unions. Because we are a Labour government, we expect the rights of working people to be at the heart of this industry's future. Madam Deputy Speaker, taken together, this is a landmark plan that stands in a great reforming tradition of Labour governments. After 1945 delivering on the promises of homes for the people, modernising the nation's housing stock under Harold Wilson in the 1960s, introducing the decent home standard for social housing in the 2000s. Each Labour government meeting the rightful expectations of working people that the next generation can expect higher standards of living than the last. That is what this government seeks to do in our time. A plan to cut bills for millions, help lift 1 million families out of fuel poverty and create good jobs, and I commend this statement to the House.
I call the Shadow Minister Andrew Bowie.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for advance copy of his statement today. Today's announcement is long overdue, an entire year to be exact. During the general election, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Labour Party claimed that they would cut household bills. This announcement should be part of that. Yet, in that time, since the general election, and under this Secretary of State's watch, energy bills have not fallen, they have gone in the opposite direction. Energy bills are up by £200 since that election, partly as a result of the Secretary of State's own political choices. We believe there is a greater role in our energy system for home batteries. We support a more technology-agnostic approach to air-to-air heat pumps, and of course we believe rooftop solar is much better than carpeting the countryside in huge solar farms. But the sector state is ignoring the core problem. We are in an electricity price crisis of this sector state's own making. And even if we are as charitable as possible and accept that they reach 5 million households, as they say they will, benefit from this plan, then it does nothing to cut bills for 83% of the country. But those households will all pay much higher taxes because of Labour's budget, including to fund this sector state's £15 billion plan. And those households are struggling with their energy bills now because of the choices of the Secretary of State. So, turning to the specific measures in the plan, his department's own figures show that the public is becoming more sceptical about heat pumps. Between winter 2024 and spring 2025, the share of people saying that they were unlikely to install an air source heat pump increased from 38% to 45%. And if you ask anyone why they don't want a heat pump, they will tell you it's the high upfront cost. Yes, but it's but it's also the high ongoing running costs, which often make them more expensive to run than a gas boiler. There is a serious risk that this government legally binding targets are forcing them to push people into buying heat pumps, but those families will all be locked into sky-high running costs because this government has a political target which is pushing up their electricity bills at the same time. Yet this plan does nothing to address those high ongoing running costs. Instead, last week, the government announced they are locking this country into higher energy prices for decades through the botched wind auction. Just imagine, Madam Deputy Speaker, if there was a plan on the table to cut the cost of running a heat pump by 20% instantly, a cheap power plan that wouldn't involve raising tax on working people to fund handouts, a plan that would axe the carbon tax and scrap the Secretary of State's rip-off wind subsidies to cut bills for every family in this country. Wouldn't that be a much better approach to make heat pumps much more attractive? Next, what steps will his department take to make sure the low-interest loans will provide good value for money? How many homes will benefit from the low and zero-interest loan scheme? And how will it be determined who gets a low-interest loan or a zero-interest loan? On the changes to the minimum energy efficiency standards for rented homes, he will know that the previous government did more than any other to improve energy efficiency standards, with half of all homes having an EPC rating of C or above when we left office, compared to 14% when the Secretary of State left office in 2010. But has his department carried out any impact assessment of what the 2030 deadline will cost landlords, and therefore how much will be passed on to renters in increased rents? His own government's data shows it will cost over £12,000 to upgrade a home from EPC E to C. £12,000 of that will then be passed on to families in increased rents. We cannot ignore all the cost that this government is imposing on the housing sector and the impact that they will have on the cost of living for families in this country. The government is going to set up a new quango, the Warm Homes Agency, to administer these schemes. So can the Secretary of State tell us how much this new quango will cost the taxpayer, how it will be held accountable, and why he decided to spend money setting up a new quango rather than have those functions delivered by his own department that he controls? And finally, the Secretary of State has already been forced by this House to ban Great British Energy from spending taxpayers' money on solar panels when there is evidence of forced labour in the supply chain. Of course, we welcome that. But can he assure the House that he will apply that same ban on slave labour to solar panel installations funded by the Warm Homes Plan? And when will he publish details of how that mechanism will work so that it can be scrutinised by this House? In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, this government is ignoring that affordability crisis the Secretary of State talks about is a crisis of his own making. They are ignoring the fact that they are locking this country into paying higher bills for far longer. If they truly want to encourage people to adopt green technology like heat pumps or EVs, they need to make electricity cheap. That means they could adopt the Conservatives' cheap power plan to cut everyone's electricity bills by 20% and scrap this reckless Clean Power 2030 target, which is locking everyone into paying higher bills for far longer.
State.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's always a pleasure to be opposite the honourable gentleman. Let me just make a few points to him, sort of in the gentlest way I can. Look, first of all, on the cost of electricity, the Chancellor in her budget did more in one decision, which was to transfer the 75% of the renewables obligation to public spending to cut electricity costs, than they did in 14 years in power. The second point is he's shouting about bills. Let me tell him the average bill in 2025 was lower in real terms than 2024, and so was the price cap, as he will know from the figures. And I am incredibly proud that this government, unlike the last government, is taking £150 of costs off bills, thanks to the Chancellor's decision, funded by taxes on the wealthy, and they oppose all of those tax measures. He talks about the renters issue. I mean, I think basically what I heard, which maybe shouldn't surprise me, is that he is actually against the higher standards for renters. He would leave renters, private renters, languishing in cold, damp homes, which is what they did in 14 years in power. We are proud of the decision we're making. I mean, actually, thanks to the brilliant work of my honourable friend, we've actually got a supportive quote from the landlords. I mean, even the landlords want more action than the Conservative Party when it comes to the renters. I mean, if just sort of to amuse the House briefly, you know, I'll even read it out. Ben Beadle, Chief Executive of the NRL. A clear roadmap for the reform of PRS is welcome. So even the landlords are more on the side of renters than the Conservative Party. He asks, why are we setting up the Warm Homes Agency? I'll tell him why. He says, you know, wouldn't it be better to do it within government? Because they presided over a scandalous and shocking disaster in the eco scheme, a mess we are having to clear up. And actually, we are going to reform the system so that we have a proper agency with proper technical expertise to make sure nothing like what they visited on thousands of families across the country ever happens again. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, I like the honourable gentleman, and I feel a bit of sympathy for him, because he has nothing to say about this issue. Let's just be honest about this. They failed over 14 years, and we're delivering.
Select Committee Chair Bill Esterson.
Can I congratulate the Secretary of State very warmly on the Warm Homes plan, not least the universal nature of the offer, from support for people in fuel poverty through health co-benefits in addressing cold, damp and mould, to the availability of cheap finance so everybody can take part in the technical solutions available. The eco scheme, which failed so badly, has left a legacy, and can I encourage him to address the concerns among consumers, amongst industry and amongst the workforce, and also not to lose sight of the benefits in reduced bills through insulation, particularly loft insulation. On the subject of cheaper bills, the Select Committee has heard again and again that in particular with the Warm Homes Plan, if people are to benefit to the maximum extent from it, we have to see reductions in the price of electricity and a reduction in the gap between the price of electricity and the price of gas. There are welcome measures. He mentioned them in his statement, the £150 off coming in April being a very, very good start. But can he confirm that more action will be taken on bringing down the cost of electricity so as many people as possible can benefit from the Warm Homes Plan to the maximum extent?
Let me address the questions that my honourable friend asked, and he speaks with great knowledge on these issues. Look, first of all, on the eco scheme, I think he was making reference partly to the installers, and it is important to emphasise the point I made in my statement, which is we want the extra money, which is £1.5 billion allocated at the budget, to help those installers because they are going to face a difficult transition, and I think he raises an important issue. On the cost of electricity, as I said in reply to the opposition spokesperson, the measures that my right honourable friend the Chancellor took in the budget are important for cutting the cost of electricity, and all of the evidence I've seen says you can get with the right tariff, running a heat pump is cheaper than running a boiler. Obviously, we continue to look at whether there are other ways we can bring the cost of electricity down, and my honourable friend is right about that. And just on his point about insulation, I think my maxim here, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the measures that will cut bills the most are what matters to me. I'm not sort of ideological about this, whether it's insulation or heat pumps or batteries or solar, whatever it is that can give us most bang for our buck in bringing down bills.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Pippa Heylings with 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And we've been asking for the Warm Homes Plan for Christmas for the past 2 years, so it's very better late than never. Unwrapping it got some mixed feelings. You know, the Liberal Democrats have long called for an emergency home energy upgrade scheme with free insulation and heat pumps, and recently also proposals for low-interest loan schemes like these. So we really, really welcome this significant investment by the government in low-carbon heating. And it's folly for anyone to think that we can rely on Putin's Russia or Trump's America for the gas to heat our homes. So it's right for the government to help households make this shift. Every solar panel, heat pump and battery install will protect families from volatile costs of fossil fuels and make homes cheaper to both warm and cool, which is a key point too. However, I have to say I do share the concerns of the energy efficiency sector about the balance that is being struck between insulation and electrification. We've seen, as the Secretary of State has said, fuel poverty rise and rates of insulation fall over the last 5 years. And the UK has some of the least energy efficient housing in Europe, leading to serious health problems with cold, damp, Dickensian home conditions. Despite our warnings, there's still no clarity in this plan about what will replace the ECO programme, leaving supply chains in limbo and skilled installers going bankrupt. And this delay, I call this out, could leave us without an operational national fuel poverty strategy over this coming winter. We hope not, and will therefore hold the government to account on this and other things that have been mentioned that are, you know, we need to hold you to account on this as being delayed. The gas and electricity price reform postponed again. Efficiency standards have been weakened for landlords. And whilst we encourage, thank you so much for taking on board the rooftop revolution on the back of Max Wilkinson's solar bill, but the future home standard is still missing in action. We can't afford more values. We welcome this significant investment. There is no time to waste. Thank you, Madam President.
I welcome the thanks, but obviously it's not down to me, but to the Minister. So we must stop using the word you, Secretary of State.
Well, look, I'm always glad to deliver the Liberal Democrats a late Christmas present, Madam Deputy Speaker. I agreed with some of the Honourable Lady's point, particularly about our dependence on fossil fuels and why clean energy is the way forward to give us energy security and sovereignty in a dangerous world. I want to reassure her on insulation. As I said to my honourable friend, we continue to see a really, really important role for insulation, but I hope she will agree and members of the House will agree that what matters as we invest public money is what is going to do most to tackle the affordability crisis, and that is our test. So absolutely insulation is a key part of that. On the eco supply chain, just to expand a little bit on what I said earlier to my honourable friend, look, we do recognise, and I know this from my own personal conversations, the issues facing organisations in the supply chain, and that's why in the £1.5 billion extra, which was on top of the £13 billion or so previously allocated in the Warm Homes Plan, we're going to make sure that £1.5 billion is spent through the eco installers to help them make this transition to the new system. My honourable friend is getting to work straight away on a group representing the installers, the local authorities, who are obviously going to be responsible for the procurement and the spending, because we want to do everything we can to help the supply chain.
Collinge.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm really pleased to see this Warm Homes Plan, as a warm home for everyone was one of my key election pledges. And in my constituency of Morecambe and Lunesdale, Green Rose CIC has been helping people for years with energy efficiency and making their homes warmer. So can the Secretary of State tell me how local experts like Green Rose CIC will be used to deliver this change for our constituents?
Well, I think my honourable friend asked a really, really important question, and I congratulate Green Rose CIC for the work that they do. We absolutely see organisations like that as central to this plan, working with local authorities, working to give local people advice, also working, and I don't know whether this applies to Green Rose CIC, on our local power plan, which will come out soon, to give opportunities for local community energy schemes as well, because community ownership is a big part of it. I see organisations like that, and it really reflects the enthusiasm on the ground as crucial to this plan.
Harriet Cross. Deputy
Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend and the Shadow Minister asked, and the Secretary of State did not manage to answer, about whether or not Chinese supply chains, slave labour supply chains, will be involved in the procurement of any aspect or any part of the solar panels involved in this scheme. Please, can the Shadow State confirm that not a single aspect of this project will come off the back of slave labour and their supply chains?
Well, I have to say to the Honourable Lady, we inherited from them I'll get to the question, the system, and we have raised the standards. We've raised the standards in the solar roadmap. Through the SSI initiative with the solar industry. We've raised the standards through GB Energy, and my honourable friend, the Minister for Energy, is working with colleagues across government to ensure that slave labour is not used in the supply chains.
Holly Billington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I congratulate my right honourable friend for this Warm Homes Plan. It has been a long time coming, but maybe perhaps a little longer than the members of the opposition are prepared to admit, since I know he and I worked on something very similar way before the Tories then left and abandoned the Warm Homes ambitions that we now see fully fulfilled. 1 in 6 of the households in my constituency live in the current calculation of fuel poverty, predominantly in places like Cliftonville and Ramsgate Town Centre, where incomes are low and buildings are old. Also, incidentally, they tend to be predominantly privately rented. Would my right honourable friend consider revising the fuel poverty calculation to really reflect the truth of how many people struggle to keep their homes warm in winter and cool in summer? Will he also confirm a little bit more about the information that might be available to support the landlords to make this shift, since it actually requires 28% of my residents actually live in private rented accommodation? Will he confirm that he will support an energy social tariff to support the transition to a cheaper and cleaner form of energy in the later?
I think my honourable friend is right about this. Working with the private rented sector to raise the standards is incredibly important, and frankly we can't let the scandalous situation that affects so many private tenants carry on. I think she also makes another important point, though. We know this is a big journey of upgrading the nation's housing stock. There's a very, very long and bad legacy that we've been left. We are determined to make a difference to it.
Alistair Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Orkney and Shetland are home to some of the worst levels of fuel poverty anywhere in the United Kingdom, as well as some of the largest onshore wind farms in the country. Solar panels are of limited usefulness to us because it's coldest in the winter, and in the depths of winter we might have as little as 5 hours daylight in the day. What would make a difference to us is meaningful support for community benefit or even community ownership of some of the installed wind farms that we have in the Isles, or an Isles tariff for communities like ours and in the Western Isles. When will we hear something from the Secretary of State on these ideas?
We'll shortly. I thank him for his question, really important question. We're going to shortly publish our local power plan, which is precisely about community ownership that he was talking about. We see that as having a central role. If you look at countries like Germany and Denmark, it plays much more of a role than here. We want to expand it, and we want his constituents to benefit.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It was interesting to hear the Liberal Democrats really struggling to say that they admire this policy, given that they seem to be getting everything that they want from it. And it's also disappointing to see the deserted Conservative benches for this. I offer my apologies to the shadow spokesperson, who is not with allies. But it's disappointing to hear the Conservatives move from being climate change converts to being sustainability sceptics yet again. The Conservatives left our country vulnerable to the energy price spikes, which made the last government have to spend at least £78 billion to deal with the cost of living crisis, whereas this government is investing big, and we've got Europe's biggest ever wind auction announced last week. Now we're seeing clean power from day one, new builds, new power. Does the Secretary of State agree that a major motive for this plan is to cut hundreds of pounds off bills in Bournemouth East to go solar by standard, and that only a rooftop revolution will help bring down bills, but keep bills down in the long term.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. I guess the honourable gentleman on the other side will be wondering where his friends have gone and whether they're going to another political party. Let me say to him, this is absolutely about his constituents. It's absolutely about cutting bills. You know, this is a long-term affordability crisis, and this is a long-term plan to help tackle it.
I have confidence that the Secretary of State is across his brief and doesn't need to be warmed up before a question. So get straight to the question so we can get on to the next member. Graham Leadbitter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the additional investment in energy efficiency measures. It's a good thing. And I certainly welcome the simplification of the energy efficiency systems that people can bid into, and that can only be a good thing for consumers. It's been a veritable maze. However, the biggest barrier for many of my constituents and people across Scotland is price. They cannot invest in their home if they cannot get a decent price for their energy and deal with the cost of living that is affecting them right now in this moment with the bills that they're getting on their doorstep right now. The North of Scotland has the highest energy prices in the UK. The SNP has put forward proposals for a social tariff. Will the Secretary of State seriously consider those measures and put in place a social tariff to enable people to take advantage of these schemes?
I'd say thanks the honourable gentleman for his question. Just to respond, it's because we recognise the immediacy of the affordability crisis that we took the action we did in the budget, take £150 of costs off bills. It's because we recognise the affordability crisis that we significantly increased the numbers eligible for the warm home discount, which I think is hundreds of thousands more people in Scotland now eligible. I would point out that the Scottish Government has some responsibility here, having cut some of their own schemes in this. But we want to work with the Scottish Government and do all we can to help the honourable gentleman's constituents.
Perkins.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. My right honourable friend has once again pulled quite a rabbit out of the Chancellor's hat, so I congratulate him. He's clearly her favourite Secretary of State. But does he agree with me that we know what happens when we don't rely on renewables? It's the £44 billion that the previous government had to pay to subsidise bills at the same time that our constituents were struggling to pay them. I agree with what my colleague, the chair of the Designated Select Committee, said about we still need to be driving down those electricity costs. But will the Secretary of State tell us, in terms of the skill shortages that we have within the heat pump installation sector, what does he think are the key things we can do to address them? And how many heat pumps should we expect to be installed by 2030?
Secretary of State.
On 2030, 450,000 is the target we set out in this plan. On his point about skills, our skills task force is absolutely designed to do what my honourable friend said, which is to meet the skills needs, the very significant skills needs we are going to have. And I think, just to the first part of my honourable friend's question, I do think the Chancellor deserves real credit for this, because she recognised the importance of long-term public investment, which the last government singularly did not. The easy thing in difficult times is to cut public investment. She didn't do that. She's increased it, and she's investing in this area very significantly.
Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I warmly welcome this plan and the ambition that the government is showing and try and dispel some of the misconceptions on the opposition benches. I'm sure we've all been out knocking on doors in our constituencies, as I was last week in Worcester Park in my constituency. And a lady came to the door in a big jacket, and I kind of let her pass because I thought she was on her way, but she wasn't, because she was in her home in a jacket because she didn't have the heating on, and I'm sure we've all experienced that. So we know how the cost of living crisis is hitting our residents, whether it's in grocery bills, whether it's in the rent, or whether it's in energy costs. Can the Minister give a bit more detail on how we're going to address those energy costs and insulation in the short term, whether there are programmes in here that can be funded for those easy wins, that we can see those leaks and those energy from existing gas boilers come down, whilst the industry spools up by getting the skills to install heat pumps, and we get the production lines in progress.
State.
I think what the honourable gentleman said at the beginning of his question is something that will resonate with every member of this House. because it's what so many people are facing, and it's a chronic and an acute cost of living crisis. It's been going on a very, very long time, and that's what makes it really hard for people. On his point about what difference we can make in the short term, that's why the £150 is important, because immediate relief is important. That's why the warm home discount is important and its expansion. And also, I do encourage people watching this and members to encourage their constituents to go to the gov.uk website. People can get to their local authorities, see what schemes are available. There is money available, and we do want to get as much help out as quickly as possible to people. Sometimes this money gets underspent, actually, by local authorities. We want this money to get out and help people.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wonder where all the Tory MPs are. They can't all be having cosy chats with Robert Jenrick.
Roast dinner.
Can I welcome this...
We do not reference members by their names, but by their constituencies. Get straight to the questions.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I do apologise. I welcome the Warm Homes plan, not only the support it will give for the most in-need constituents in Bracknell Forest, but actually the support for everyone to make important upgrades to their home, including with low and no interest loans for solar panel upgrades. Can I ask my right and honourable friend what thoughts he's given to supporting leaseholders to make sure that they are able to make these changes and aren't held back by freeholders turning down sensible and common sense requests?
Okay.
Absolutely, we see leaseholders as being eligible for this help. It's very, very important that they are. And I think my honourable friend speaks very compellingly about this issue with his constituency experience. We want as many people as possible to be helped as quickly as possible with this plan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Despite the fact that these plans will not apply to Northern Ireland, I do welcome the aspect of the plans which apply to rented accommodation. Maybe the Minister could confirm whether or not there will be a Barnett consequential for Northern Ireland. But does he recognise that even with these plans, there will still be an upfront cost which will require low-income families to borrow, and that will be an impediment? And secondly, the running costs will still be higher despite what he has done in electricity prices, because that's been offset by the cost of his net zero policies, which cause electricity to be dearer than gas.
I thought for the first time in 20 years we were going to agree completely, but we nearly got there. 3/4 agreement is better than we've done in 20 years. Look, on the first part of what he says, look, we recognise that there are Barnett consequentials have already been allocated for this, and we would encourage, obviously it's for the decision for the government of Northern Ireland to make their own, the executive to make their own decisions on how they spend their money. We do want the Warm Homes Agency to work with people, with devolved governments as well. And we also want to look at how zero and low interest loan scheme can work across the United Kingdom too. So we want to work as much as possible with devolved governments to help people across the UK.
Anderson.
I particularly welcome the new requirements placed on private landlords, which will be a huge boost to tenants in the Buckingham and Bletchley constituency. My question concerns rural communities who often face high energy costs and other practical barriers, such as the limited availability of those who would install things like heat pumps. So can he set out a bit more detail about how he will be working, his department will be working with relevant local authorities and suppliers to ensure that rural communities like those in North Buckinghamshire aren't left behind?
Next state.
I think my honourable friend asked a really important question, and I want to sort of tell him a nerdy fact, which is, I like nerdy facts. It's in character. Nearly half of the people who've got the boiler upgrade scheme are actually in rural areas, and I think I'm right in saying that a third are off the gas grid. And so I think this tells you something actually about the kind of appetite there is, particularly in rural communities and particularly those off the gas grid, to find alternatives. And so hopefully the continuation and indeed expansion of these schemes will help his constituents.
Dr. Ellie Chowns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I warmly welcome the publication of the long-awaited Warm Homes Plan. The Green Party has tirelessly campaigned for many of the things in here. A more consistent, nationwide, clearer, straightforward system for people to access support, better inspection and accountability for installers, and of course solar panels as default on roofs. However, two questions for the Secretary of State. First of all, this is supposed to be a warm homes plan, but there's a lot of focus on energy supply improvements and less than I would expect on energy demand management, insulation, which is crucial to reducing bills. Why is that? And secondly, the scale of this plan is still nowhere close to the need. 2.7 million households in fuel poverty, according to the government's own statistics. 6 million households, according to other statistics. This plan aims to address 1 million of those households only. It's a 25% cut on the previous amount promised for this work. Why is that, and what will the government do to reach those millions of additional households who won't be...
I'm sort of half thank her for her question. Look, on the second question, look, I have to say, by anyone's reckoning, this is a very substantial investment. I mean, it's multiple times more than was done in the last Parliament, and I think there does need to be recognition of that. I will say to the Honourable Lady, I recognise that there is further to go. This is going to help 5 million homes, and there are a lot more homes that we also want to help, but I think it is, by anyone's measure, making a difference. I just want to go on to her first point, because I want to sort of reassure her on this point. You know, we absolutely see the value of fabric and insulation as part of this agenda, but I think the focus has got to be what works to cut bills, because that's what our constituents want us to focus on.
Rachel Hopkins.
And I too warmly welcome the Warm Homes Plan, which will benefit families in Luton South and South Bedfordshire, especially the measures targeted at low-income families to help lift them out of fuel poverty. So does the Secretary of State agree with me that after a decade of failure from the party opposite, it is this Labour government that recognises the cost of living crisis and is taking definitive action through this record public investment in home upgrades to help reduce bills for good?
I think my honourable friend puts it very well. We are turning the page on a decade of failure. And look, I think it's really, really important that the public know that we get the scale of the crisis that they are facing, this long-term crisis which this government came into office and is determined to deal with. And we're not over-claiming on this plan, but it will make a difference. And what we are about is making a difference to people in the cost that they face, so that we can help tackle the cost of living crisis.
Helen Morgan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Secretary of State has already pointed out, in rural areas we tend to have an older housing stock, lots of people off-grid, and they are very keen to see upgrades made to their home, and we welcome this announcement. In my constituency, a number of people engaged with the Eco4 scheme, and unfortunately they have been let down badly by rogue installers who've left their bills higher, their homes damaged, and who have taken money from the taxpayer. Can the Secretary of State describe to me what he's doing to ensure that that doesn't happen again this time, and also what remedy might be available for those people who have been let down by those rogue actors under Eco4?
Secretary of State.
Well, look, any cases, and I do say this to the Honourable Lady, should be brought to the attention of my honourable friend, because, you know, I feel a deep sense of sympathy for the people who've been badly affected by Eco4, by the problems in Eco4, and it's obviously something that was brought to our attention when we came to office, and we are determined to have remediation for all of the people affected. I think that has got to be the fundamental principle here, that people through no fault of their own have been badly let down by the system, and they deserve to have that made good for them. On her point about how do we stop it happening in the future, I mean, I'd say a couple of things. First of all, our experience is that local authority schemes had many fewer problems and had much higher standards of safeguards. And secondly, the point of the Warm Homes Agency is to have a proper system of regulation which government oversees. I mean, that is the fundamental principle here. We had a piecemeal, privatised, fragmented system, and that is partly what led to the problems. We can't allow that to continue.
Matt Rodder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could I wholeheartedly welcome this announcement from the Secretary of State, and also welcome his work over many years in this very important policy area. This is an enormous issue in my constituency, with many older houses, many people struggling to pay their bills. So I wholeheartedly welcome it. I wondered if he might say a little bit also about the very important work that many local authorities are doing. In my area, Reading Borough Council, the Labour-run council, has invested heavily in new council houses, and shortly is due to open 300 new council houses built to a very high standard to ensure that people live in warm homes and have secure family finances with lower heating bills.
State.
I
think my honourable friend raised a really important point. I was with all the mayors on Monday, talking to them about their role in relation to the Warm Homes Plan. And look, whether it's local authorities or whether it's regional mayors, they have the best sense about what their areas need, and they are the people to help coordinate and make this happen. And the truth is, Madam Deputy Speaker, you know, in reality, lots of people have rightly said we need to do more, you know, that this is good, but could we go further? This is going to be a 15, 20-year project for the country. You know, and I think that is the way to think about this, which is this is a national mission to transform our housing stock. It's long overdue. We're making a really, really important start, and there will be further to go.
Lizzi Roberts.
And there is much to welcome with the Warm Homes Plan. Wales, of course, has the oldest housing stock in Europe, with around a third of houses built before 1919. Because of this, Wales is rightly a net beneficiary of eco-schemes, with 6% of all eco-measures and 12% of eco-FOI, and he'll recognise that this is higher than the Barnett consequential funding based on population share. So can he explain how the Warm Homes funding for Wales will be sufficient to meet the extreme challenges facing Welsh homeowners?
Well, look, clearly, you know, this scheme is really, really important for Wales and for the impact. Just if you take the boiler upgrade scheme, for example, and we are determined to work with the Welsh Government to make sure that this really makes a difference for people in Wales, and that is the work that my honourable friend is doing.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome this £15 billion investment to tackle energy security and make sure that family finances are protected from fossil fuel price spikes. There is a fantastic organisation in my constituency, co-founded by a lady called Jane, called Women in Retrofit, which focuses on getting more women and more girls into the retrofit industry. We simply won't be able to meet these targets without using that part of the workforce. So can I ask the Secretary of State what he has considered around getting more women and girls into this?
I congratulate Jane. I congratulate Women in Retrofit. I think they sound like ideal people for my honourable friend's task force to talk to. I think my honourable friend makes such a powerful point about the diversity of opportunities there are here, and we want as many people as possible to take advantage of them.
Edward Morello.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the co-chair of the APPG on Net Zero, I want to welcome the expansion of the funding for solar and for heat pumps. As somebody who, prior to coming to this place, spent the better part of a decade riding the solar coaster, I know for a fact that the biggest drag on the run-out of solar and expansion of solar is the skills shortage. So I just wonder if the Secretary of State would fill us in on what the government plans to do and what other departments will be doing in order to ensure that the skills are there for these installations to go ahead.
State.
Well, the Honourable Gentleman makes a really important point. The solar roadmap set out some of the work that we're doing, but the whole point of the task force, and I think this is a much more intentional way of thinking about the workforce challenges compared to the previous government, is to make sure that we do have the workforce in place. You know, the fact that we saw over 200,000 installations last year does show the level of demand for rooftop solar. When you think about some of the eco organisations that are sort of struggling with the transition, they could be part of this, but we want to make sure that happens.
Henna.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Look, I'm really pleased to see this plan. It's such a welcome change from the lukewarm gusts of hot air that have come from the opposition when they were in government. It's practical, it's pragmatic, and it's deliverable. Lots of people in my constituency will welcome how fair it is as well, particularly for people on lower incomes, but middle incomes, house owners, renters, everyone. But the worry for people in my constituency is going to be that we have a local authority in Kent County Council that is committed to climate denialism. They're obsessed with it. And how can people in my constituency of Sittingbourne and Sheppey get the advantages for their houses, for their jobs, for their employment, for the tradespeople that really want to be part of this?
State.
I think my honourable friend makes a really important point, and I would say to the council that he talks about, leave your dogma at the door and help local people. Work with us to help local people.
Bob Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Labour-run Kirklees Council failed to apply for the first round of government Warm Homes local grants last year. In a cost of living crisis, this is an unforgivable abdication of duty and a total failure by Labour councillors, resulting in a loss of between £1.5 to £7 million that was secured by neighbouring authorities. I do welcome the government's Warm Homes plan, but my question to the Secretary of State is, will he confirm that the cost of this Warm Homes plan will not be added to monthly household bills across the country? And will he ensure that, unlike under the previous government, where my constituents were left with incomplete and dangerous and ineffective installations that they had to pay thousands to remove, that they will not be faced with the same issue?
I mean, first of all, it sounds like negative propaganda against Kirklees Council, which I'm sceptical about. But secondly, on the wider issue, I would say that the whole point of this is we're doing this through public investment, and that's the decision the Chancellor took, and I think it's the right decision.
Alistair.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I really welcome the announcement today. Stoke-on-Trent is routinely ranked as #1 in the country for fuel poverty. We have old terrace housing, often with single glaze and small yards, so spacing for heat pumps and these things is a concern, but I'm sure we'll work that out. We are very fortunate that Fiona Miller and the Beat the Coal team, who have met recently with the Minister for Consumer Energy, does a lot of work on the ground. So can I ask the Secretary of State, he says this will be run through local authorities. Where we have good partnerships on the ground in localities already doing the work, how can they be involved in this programme? And he also says that he is aware of the challenges that the suppliers of the Eco Grant face for having lost those contracts. In my constituency of Stoke-on-Trent, that's lots of jobs that have been lost now. How soon will the information be available to them so they can start workforce planning for the delivery of this programme so they can get people back into work delivering the upgrades we need?
On his first point about the partnerships, we want to use local partnerships that are already in place. On the point about the eco installers, that's the work that my honourable friend, the Minister, will be cracking on with. The reason why we didn't want to just say we're going to allocate the money and it needs to go through the eco installers is we want to make sure it happens, and we will urgently work on that.
Questions need to be much shorter, as do the answers from the Secretary of State. Shulkadadin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for his statement and welcome much of it, including the fact that he recognises the challenging facing suppliers and the fact that it's going to support 180,000 jobs. But can I ask, will the government commit to working with small local businesses, helping the local economy, or for this scheme, to deliver this scheme, or will it be just for the big boys?
SMEs will be crucial to this scheme.
Luke Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With cost of living the #1 issue for my constituents in Basingstoke, I welcome this record investment in warmer homes and lower bills. Measures like zero and low interest loans for solar batteries and heat pumps, greater protections for renters and solar on new homes are all measures that will make a huge amount of difference. But can I ask the Secretary of State when my constituents will be able to begin applying for those low and zero interest loans, because for many of them there is no time to wait.
Yeah. Secretary of State.
Well, my honourable friend raises an important point, and we're going to be working urgently with the banks and others. Indeed, I think there's a roundtable being convened next week to work out how quickly we can get on with this process. We want to do this as soon as possible. It will take time, and if there's one lesson from the past, it's we need to get this right. Because we don't want a Green Deal and all of that malarkey happening. So we want to get it right, but we do want to do it as quickly as we can.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I particularly welcome the investment in the low-cost loans for solar panels. It's really going to boost jobs. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, the grid is not currently resilient enough to cope when our EV cars are providing microgeneration and as arrays get more efficient and hit the target for DNO approval. So what assurance does the Warm Homes Plan provide about investment in the grid and the capacity of DNOs so the revolution is successful and not a failed bright idea?
Well, look, we're doing big investment in the transmission infrastructure, and I would really urge all honourable members locally to be supporting that, not opposing it. And we're also doing this big reordering of the grid queue, which is crucial because that means that you then get the projects in the places that you need them.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome this significant investment. My constituents were badly let down by the previous faulty cavity wall insulation scheme and then were chased for adverse legal costs. So ensuring confidence in future schemes will be really important. Can I ask how we're supporting those really good suppliers under the ECO scheme and how quickly that transition will be in place in supporting them?
I think my honourable friend makes a really important point about the fragility of consumer confidence. You've got to support it. And really the point of this oversight group that my honourable friend will chair is to make sure we do as much as we can to support those good eco-suppliers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I warmly welcome the new minimum energy efficiency standards for privately rented homes in the long-awaited Warm Homes Plan. but could the Secretary of State lay out how he's going to ensure that landlords don't simply pass on the costs of meeting those standards to renters? Could he perhaps ask his colleague, the Housing Secretary, to introduce rent controls in order to make sure that renters can afford to actually rent these new warm homes?
Dave?
I'm not going to do that, but what I will say to her is that, look, lots of landlords already meet these standards, first point. Secondly, we do want to provide some help to landlords to make this happen. And I think that this is an important point. Some of the schemes we've been talking about will be available to landlords. So through a combination of the fact that some landlords are already doing it and this help, we're confident that this will actually reduce costs and won't lead to higher rents.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm sure the Secretary of State will agree it's not just about having the right policy, which I'm sure this is, but also having the right implementation. My constituents, Mr and Mrs Henry Smith, had a heat pump installed under a previous government scheme. The heat pump was so badly installed by Greener Living that the installer had to offer a backup gas boiler to get the home hot enough. Greener Living went bust. So will the Secretary of State now give an assurance that in future, under his schemes, there will be an assurance to anyone having an installation done, it will be done by competent companies, and that if it does go wrong, the government will stand behind people in making sure rectification work is done to a proper standard?
Absolutely, yes. I'm so sorry to hear about the experience of his constituents, Madam Deputy Speaker. We've got to make sure that we don't let this kind of thing happen.
Manuela Petkeller. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In my constituency of Stratford-on-Avon, there are hundreds of residential park homes which are occupied by elderly residents, and these are very energy-inefficient homes and very complex to retrofit. And previous home upgrade grants were quite ineffective and bureaucratic because of the batching application for process of ready to retrofit homes. So they didn't reach many park homes. So will the Secretary of State ensure that the Warm Homes Plan will effectively deliver also for park homes residents?
As a constituency MP with park homes in my constituency, I'm very, very sympathetic to the issues facing people who live in park homes. I think in order to give her a proper answer, why don't we take that away, and I'm going to pass that on to my honourable friend.
Abdullah Mohammed. Speaker, I too warmly welcome this plan and the investment that's coming with this, and strongly commend the leadership of the Secretary of State on this particular area. It's great news that small businesses are the vehicle that will drive home the upgrade in our local communities, but they too have struggled. I've got over 5,000 small businesses in Sheffield Central. So can the Secretary of State outline how small businesses in Sheffield Central will benefit from this plan?
Well, I think my honourable friend is right about this. They are eligible for the boiler upgrade scheme, and there's substantial investment in that. We want them to benefit from the solar loans as well, and we also want, through the procurement through local authorities, to help them too. I think she's really right about this is the massive job creation opportunity, but we do need the SME sector to get its fair share.
Amanda Martin.
I too congratulate my right honourable friend on a deliverable warmer homes plan. On Friday I'm hosting a utility cost of living event with energy and water suppliers and banks because Portsmouth North residents were let down dramatically by the last government. Does the Secretary of State agree that home upgrades are one of the most effective ways to bring down energy bills, particularly for families where we've got 5,000 households in Portsmouth North officially living in fuel poverty and more struggling with energy costs because of prefabs, Victorian or older buildings need less efficient heating?
Well, I congratulate my honourable friend on convening people locally on the crucial issue of the cost of living crisis, and I'm sure that will be really effective and important event that she is hosting. And she is absolutely right. Home upgrades for her constituents in Portsmouth North and elsewhere are absolutely the long-term answer to the cost of living crisis.
Ayub Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I certainly welcome this statement to the House, especially that this scheme will now ensure there's a degree of localisation and devolution in terms of decision-making, and will hopefully get rid of the problems that we saw in the last government scheme. In Birmingham Perry-Barr, we have thousands of residents which have fallen victim to substandard work. So can I ask the Secretary of State, he's mentioned that there will be remediation. Will this remediation allow them to apply for this new scheme?
State.
Well, look, I think the remediation of the previous work should happen sort of whatever. It shouldn't require them to have to apply. There should be a process with Trustmark, who are the overseers, I think, in the case that he's talking about. But look, this is something that my department is very, very focused on. It would have been much better if this mess had not been created in the first place, but we're determined to clean it up. And if he has areas where it's not being cleaned up, please do them draw them to my attention of my honourable friend.
Jonathan Brash.
Madam Deputy Speaker, 15% of Hartlepool constituents live in fuel poverty. Many more go without in order to pay the outrageous energy bills that they face, with many vulnerable children and elderly people living in properties that are too cold and too damp. That's not acceptable to me, and I know it's not acceptable to the Secretary of State. So can he say a little bit more about how we ensure that the welcome measures in this plan reach the most vulnerable people in communities like Hartlepool and beyond?
State.
My honourable friend speaks incredibly eloquently, and I'm sure it will resonate with people right across this House when they think about their constituents who are poor and vulnerable and facing a choice between heating and eating. I think the key thing here is to get this money out to local authorities and indeed combined authorities who are the best people to deliver this. Because I think that is repeatedly, if you look back over the previous years, that is the experience, and that is the way to get the help most urgently to people.
Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State very much for his statement. That really is good news, and we all welcome the Warm Homes Plan and help for families. However, I have some concerns, and I want to ask the Secretary of State if I can ask him, please. Can the Secretary of State outline how the devolved nations, I know the Barnett Consequential has been confirmed, that's good news, but the Executive will be the administrative body in Northern Ireland. So how will they administer the access and to deliver the scheme? And also, how will the so-called, I ask this question very, very gently, the so-called squeezed middle-class families, middle-income families who are highly taxed due to fiscal drag, obtain help for insulation for the middle class, for those squeezed middle class who struggle to heat and pay their mortgage-owned homes? Thank you.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his important question, and I can tell him that the Minister met the Minister for Communities in the Northern Ireland Executive yesterday to talk about how we can work together, for example, on the Warm Homes Agency, which is UK-wide, hopefully on the solar loans as well. We want to do absolutely everything we can to work with the Northern Ireland Executive to help serve the people of Northern Ireland.
Jonathan Davies.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I very much welcome the publication of this £15 billion Warm Homes Plan, which is going to get people's bills down and reduce our impact on the environment. But I was particularly interested to hear in the £90 million which has been set aside for the development of heat pumps, because Vaillant, one of the world's leading manufacturers of heat pumps, is based in Belper in my constituency. So I'm going to ask him what steps is he taking to ensure that £90 million is spent well? Will he engage with Vaillant to make sure that we can draw upon their experience, and can we use that money to create more good jobs in this very important sector in Derbyshire?
Yeah, we love Vaillant and what they do. My honourable friend loves it so much she's going tomorrow to visit. It's part of the £90 million heat pump investment accelerator programme, and it is absolutely about working with companies like Vaillant so we can get domestic manufacturing in this country, which I'm sure is shared right across the House.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I warmly welcome the statement by the Secretary of State today. I had a visit from Citizens Advice Harlow yesterday, and they told me what we probably already know, that the #1 issue facing residents in Harlow is damp, mould and fuel poverty. My homes in Harlow weren't built in 1919 because Harlow didn't exist in 1919, but there's a unique problem that new towns do have, that they were all built at the same time, sometimes quickly after the war. So actually they're suffering from these problems at the same time. So I can ask the Secretary of State to take the new town challenge into consideration, and can he detail how this will make a huge difference for residents in my constituency Harlow? Sorry.
My honourable friend speaks about a really important issue, and I was conscious of this from other experiences of visits that I've made. I think my honourable friend the Minister heard his statement. I think we do need to think about this, because there are areas like Harlow and elsewhere where they have particular challenges.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There are 44,000 homes in York which are energy insecure, so we'll really welcome today's announcement. However, that is talking about scale, and scaling the skills is really important. So can the Secretary of State say how he's working with the Education Secretary, ensuring further education has the resources it needs to scale the workforce for the future?
My honourable friend speaks with typical eloquence on these issues. this came up at the Mayor's meeting on Monday, and about how we ensure that particularly the FE sector is geared up to help train people for these opportunities. It's something absolutely we'll work with Skills England and the mayors on, and it's something that my honourable friend will be taking forward.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Secretary of State will recall a visit to Derby where he officially opened Valiant's heat source cylinder facility. Could he outline what today's announcement will mean to build on this, creating more clean energy jobs in Derby and across the UK?
Well, I very much enjoyed the visit to Valiant, and it was incredibly impressed by what they were doing. And programmes like the Heat Pump Investment Accelerator are absolutely designed, as I said earlier, to help companies like Valiant to capitalise on this growing market.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I too welcome the warm home plans to lower constituents' heating bills and for the biggest home upgrade in British history. So how is the Secretary of State ensuring that clean energy is not only the right choice for clean emissions, but also for cutting bills while avoiding past Conservative failures on insulation that left tens of thousands of homes with severe damp, mould and structural damage?
Well, look, I think my honourable friend speaks with very good sense on this. This is a huge opportunity for people. We're seeing record demand, and the question for this House and the question for all of us is, do we want that just to be for the wealthiest or for everyone? The point of the public investment is to make it within the reach of ordinary families. That's what is at the heart of this plan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for his statement and commitment to improve energy efficiency in people's homes and reduce bills for constituents like mine in North West Leicestershire. As the Chair of the APPG on Future Homes, Skills and Innovation, I'd welcome more details on the task force identified in the plan to ensure we have the skills and the innovation to meet the ambition so my constituents can benefit from warmer homes as well as the good jobs that this sector can provide.
My honourable friend put it very well, and I'm sure the Minister will be happy to talk to her about how we can make sure that this task force does what she thinks is necessary to get the workforce we need.
Final question, Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Secretary of State on behalf of the over 5,000 households in Shipley constituency who experience fuel poverty. Constituents have also benefited from Saltaire Retrofit Reimagined, a community initiative focused on improving energy efficiency within the Saltaire World Heritage Site. Would the Secretary of State assure residents of listed properties like those in Saltaire that they can too benefit from these upgrades?
Secretary of State.
Yeah, absolutely, and I pay tribute to the work of my honourable friend on this issue. We want these benefits to be spread as widely as possible. My honourable friend says he's going to be shortly visiting with my honourable friend to see this. Just as this is the final question, Madam Deputy Speaker, I just want to say one other thing, which is I just want to thank the civil service team that has worked on this plan, because over many, many months they have worked tirelessly on this plan, and I really want to put on record my thanks to them and indeed for members, and we look forward to engaging with people across the House on the implementation of this plan.
That is the end of the statement on Warm Homes Plan. I'll give the front benches a moment or two to shuffle over. The next one called